Hello and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here today for our DEI interview with Curt Kwak. We are celebrating Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so Curt is so kind to take the time of the day to participate in today's interview. And we've got some fun stuff that he'll also be sharing while the interview is happening. So Curt, are you here?
Hey, Puna, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this. It's exciting. It's a little unrehearsed, so if it gets a little bit clunky, please bear with me. But I prep myself as best as I can, and hopefully this will be helpful to the listeners, and hopefully there will be a lot of interactions along the way too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So today we're sharing Curt's side of his, sharing his Asian American heritage. And again, for everybody to be aware that this is Asian American Pacific Islander. And so, again, we've got some that Curt is going to be sharing. So we just like start with a few questions, if that's okay.
Let's go. Yeah.
So first off, Curt, we've got a few questions here about identity. And how do you identify within the Asian American and Pacific Islander community?
Well, we have those discussions at home as well. How do we as a family identify ourselves within the community? And as myself as an individual, how do I really identify myself in that AAPI community? And, I guess the simplest way to define and articulate that is, people look to what we do here at Proliance Surgeons, and people kind of keep an eye on what I do, from a career perspective. And also when I go out and meet folks or I mentor folks, and I on the side note, I do mentor about 4 or 5 individuals currently, some from the University of Washington MSIS program. And I am also part of this organization that provides up and coming leaders as candidates for me to mentor. And I do get a mix of races or racial profile folks, and we do talk about things like this. And it's important that we talk about why we do the things we do, how we identify ourselves within our community, and how we support the community, and how that fuels our confidence to do the things that we should be doing and we want to be doing. Right. So that's kind of how. It's not a simple answer. And that question is a real complex and a tough question, Waipuna. But yeah, I would say just from a higher level perspective, that's how I would do it.
Who are the role models or mentors that have influenced you or helped guide you?
As I was growing up, we immigrated to this country a long time ago. And I firsthand saw the struggles. And I'm not saying, immigrants don't have struggles in the beginning, because they have to kind of get their footing in the new country, and they have to find ways to, support the family and find a path for the family to not only survive initially, but then to progress into becoming part of this fabric in the community that we live in. So I watched all that, and I witnessed the struggles. I felt the pain along the way. And instead of just thinking back, instead of looking for mentors to learn from, I realized at the time it was more of a survival. Do everything you can to get by, do everything you can to do what you need to do to take the next steps and really get going on that, right? But along the way, I met friends who were at the time a lot mature than I, and I received mentorship from some of my direct friends in school. There was a specific teacher in middle school who really made a huge difference in my life. Really, the first time a teacher actually took me under her wings and really pushed me in a way that I've never felt before. Always reminding, hey, Curt, I'm going to push you, because I know there's something in there that I want to pull out of you. And I want you to feel that, and I want you to experience it. And she was a huge part of me. So I guess first official mentor in my life was Misty from my middle school. And then, I was into sports, and I watched a lot of sporting events on TV, and of course, you gravitate toward these athletes who really excel in their craft and their sports. But I remember very vividly, I still do, this gentleman named Don Mattingly for the New York Yankees in the early 80s. He was a up-and-coming superstar, but he was humble. He was one of the best, but he was yet humble. He was he was one of the hardest working players at the time, and that there's proof of that everywhere. And the fact that other superstars at the time, like I don't want to date myself, but like the George Bretts and the Wade Boggs and Dave Winfields, Ricky Henderson, they would all say, "Oh my God, I'm trying to model my game to match that of Don Mattingly." So I watched all that, and I realized what a true champion should do, how a true champion should talk, how a true champion actually acts and presents him or herself, right? The talk, the language, the demeanor, the humility that he was showing on a regular basis while performing at the highest levels. That also made a huge impact in my young life at the time. And then when I came into the work world, there were a number of individuals I could say helped shape who I am today. But there was a specific vendor from Sprint. This was way back. And he was an older gentleman, and he became a quick friend of mine. He became a friend of mine very quickly. And I thought, he's probably doing that. He's probably friendly, and he's probably collaborating because, I'm a client and he's looking for more sales and all of that. But no, he was very Christian, he was a devout Christian. And he didn't come to our offices to try to explain what they do or what to sell at all. He actually started to ask about my family. He started to ask about my career aspirations. He asked me how long I think I'll be doing what I'm doing at the time. He started to ask me things like, what are my struggles? What do you want to get better at? And to this day, I still consider him in one of my earliest professional mentors. And this spans about 25 years. So, and along the way, I worked for great CEOs, COOs. I had great directors that I worked for and learned from. I have a number of colleagues that I always look to talk to and learn more from. And I also can't, forget the employees here at Proliance Surgeons. My IT managers always push me to the brim, right? And I learn a lot from my own team members because they have some wonderful perspectives, and they really push to, I'm not going to say force, but they want me to. And it makes me want to excel. It makes me want to do more than I am currently doing and to be the best I can. So not one, but a variety of, I would say, mentors and guidance along the way.
I appreciate that. And as you explained that, your first significant mentor was your middle school teacher. I would have to agree. I have the same experience. I would say the same. I have a middle school teacher as well, who is a great mentor. But having multiple mentors in your life, and also, as you mentioned, the employees here at Proliance and other IT members help kind of mentor you back, right, to be better. So there's an ebb and flow and a great collaboration and shared experience that everybody has this mentorship together in the community. So that's great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. Does your family have any traditions? I mean, stepping into other questions, does your family have any traditions, that is important to you besides, career growth, mentorship, and, being able to identify?
Well, yes, we do. Our family is proud of the fact that we have not lost the Korean heritage and Korean culture within the family. And one way to reinforce that is to be like Koreans at home. The language, the meals, the activities, the expectations, the dialogue, right? And it doesn't have to be in the Korean language. I mean, it's mostly English because my kids are very, they were born here, and but our grandparents are almost, first generation Koreans, and it's really awkward when your kids cannot speak the language to interact with your grandparents, right? So they're very prideful in the fact that they could actually interact with the grandparents actively. I'm proud that I haven't lost the language because I immigrated to this country when I was very young, and I know a lot of my colleagues who kind of lost that language aspect of it, and I'm grateful that I am able to converse with my parents as well as my in-laws who are older first generation Koreans, and my wife and I always try to keep that as a recurring thing so that we don't lose that culture, the heritage, the connection back to who we really, where we really came from and who we really are. And just exposing those things to our kids so they don't forget either. And I'm just happy that they're embracing it and they're practicing it on a daily and recurring basis.
But the follow-up question I wanted to ask, how has your heritage shaped the person that you are today?
That's also a very deep and personal question for me. There's a lot of folks that I looked up to, both who were Korean as well as other nationalities, and of course those who were local around me as well. And I got to be honest, there were a lot of times where I said that's exactly what I want to be like, or that's who I need to be and want to be, right? I had those questions in my head a lot. I still do at times, because I think those are the right things to do, or those are the right things to be. All right. So I have a lot of questions about of a lot of that within me. And being part of the AAPI and the expectations more specific to like my perspective, some of the stereotypes about the Asian, we are quiet, we're introverted, we're not assertive, you hear that a lot, right? You're relatively quiet, you're very respectful of your surroundings, or you're very respectful of your hierarchy. So there's a lot of that, which is, not untrue, but I don't think there's anything wrong with showing respect. As long as you don't dwell on that, right? I think the best and truest relationship, the core of it is around respect. And that's really needed on both sides, right? And if you do not practice that or don't show it regularly, then you as a person, what are you expecting back, right? So I rather give, and if nothing comes back, that's okay, because I know I did my best and I gave it. But if something comes back as a reciprocal, that's awesome, right? That means we did something right. So I use the word respect as a core of what I do on a day-to-day basis. And respect can correlate to a lot of things. Hard work, the way you build relationships, way you network with folks. I mean, as an example, my career path. I don't know, Misty, if you could share just a quick. There's I was going through this as I was preparing this, and the people you see there that are around me, these all occurred through respectful relationships and partnerships. The things that I did for them and the things they did in reciprocal, people that I stayed in touch with, and some of these folks who were going through hard times and they looked to me for assistance. Or when I was going through a hard time, I would reach out to some of these folks and ask for help or ask for guidance, and they were happy to provide that. And as long as I don't take any of that for granted, as long as I'm appreciative, things like the experiences that you see in front of you right there, you can't pay for these things, and I guess the best part of all of this is each time I did one of these events, it felt like I was giving back to the community. to the community that gave so much to me. And afterwards, you feel so good that you provided some contribution to a community that helped you become what you are today. And this is just outside of Proliance Surgeons, right? Within Proliance Surgeons, again, my team, my direct team, like Lisa, Kim, Will, and Paul, they contribute to my thought process and my mental well-being all the time. They challenge me and I challenge them back. And it's those challenges that create those special things that we're able to use to improve the services back to Proliance Surgeons, right? And our physicians, there's some of the best minds that I've ever worked with. I'm gonna pull some names like Dr. Brian Cameron or Dr. Thomas Knipe as an example. They're not only brilliant minds as physicians, but they're some of the most genuine and best people I've ever met. And it's such a pleasure to work with folks like that, right? And anybody at CSO, they're so supportive. They're so good, so good. I guess that's the best word I could use to work with and to be with. It's so friendly, so supportive, so willing to help every time there is a need. It just, I can't be at a better spot right now when it comes to that. So again, core is respect, right? And respect to me kind of led to a lot of the things that you see in front of me and where I am today.
And so you have a great deal of work ethic, that also has helped shape the person that you are today.
Yes.
Which stems from your heritage, the people that you've surrounded with, your mentorship, friends and family, career folks. And so it has positively influenced your career and professional experiences. And so as Misty shared that slideshow there, it's telltale, right? A huge impact in the information data community, obviously.
Yeah.
And nationwide here in Washington State and for Proliance Surgeons. So
absolutely,
we are, lucky to have you.
Well,
lucky to have you.
I'm lucky to be here. Absolutely. I still feel I was lucky. I was at the right place at the right time. And when the decisions were made, I was lucky to have received the offer and, become part of Proliance Surgeons family. So Waipuna, one thing I do want to add is you work hard, but if you constantly work hard, you're going to burn out. So you got to have some fun too. And I wanted to share a couple of, personal side of me that keeps me going outside of work and even outside of the family a little bit. So as you may or may not know, I'm a diehard Seahawks fan.
Yes.
Sports fan in general. And if I'm, these things kind of take me away from the day-to-day stresses and day-to-day work so that I can refuel myself to kind of keep doing what we're all trying to do, right? Work hard, support the business, support this organization, and just have the strength and courage, continue to have that strength and courage to give back to the community, right? A lot of these were fun for me, but a lot of these were also very community-driven events. And a lot of these were like fundraising type of activities. But yeah, just wanted to kind of share some of the things that I was able to do. And then I guess the next page is I'm also a golfer. And as you may already know, I am still a big Russell Wilson fan. And I probably have pretty much every one of his autographed relics that's available since, he came into the Seahawks in 2012. And in addition to some of my childhood hobbies that are still my hobby today, which is just general sports collectibles and things like that. So that's a little bit on the personal side and things that I do. That picture right there is with the Dr. Olson from ECOS. And again, Dr. Brian Cameron, Dr. Thomas Knipe, Dr. Justin Olson, phenomenal people, phenomenal, very fun to be with. And just wanted to share some of this.
Thank you so much for sharing that personal side of you. I appreciate that. it's not easy for people to share personal sides of you, but as you said earlier, that part of your work, you also gave back to the community, and why not do that while being a huge fan of the same team that in our professional career we support.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's amazing. I miss Russell.
Thank you.
But leading on into a few more questions that we have.
Yes.
And there are challenges that we endure in life. So I kind of wanted to touch base a little bit on that subject as well.
Okay.
And just kind of see, where do you think, or where do you feel there are some important issues that is facing the Asian American Pacific Islander community in today's society?
I spoke with some of my colleagues who are Asian Americans just to get their perspective, to affirm some of my, perspectives. And one of the key words that came up was perspective. Perspective is very, very important, along with context of how things are received and how things are viewed and how things are really approached, right? And identity, you asked about the identity multiple times already. Identity is critical. And I know a number of colleagues or contacts in the AAPI community that have self-identity, community, I guess, belonging, and because of that, self-confidence challenges, right? So they look up to leaders, whether it's myself or other AAPI related leaders, for guidance on that. And what kind of perspective can we provide them to kind of graduate away from that lost identity or potentially lost identity and lost in self-confidence, right? It's important to feel we belong in a community. But when you sense or when you feel you are different, or when someone is, or some form or fashion, or these days, oh my goodness, the social media is so damaging. When you hear messages that you may not belong, or you're unique and you don't really belong in this or that, that hits them really, really hard. And I know this firsthand because my daughter and I talk about this all the time. And, we have to talk it out. We have to talk it out. We have to remind ourselves that that's just noise. And only thing that matters is what we believe in ourselves. And that's really the only way you're going to climb out of that. But if you lose that strength, that courage to believe in what you are today, it's this fragile line, right? That could cross one way or the other. You could remain strong, or you could easily cross into the other section where you're just so lost and so frustrated and so scared that you are different from your community, right? So I think that's one of the things that this AAPI Heritage and AAPI Recognition Month will help a lot of folks who may be on that verge or who may be on that line, to kind of push them, to remind them that you are part of the community, whether you know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make it so they start to believe it even more than they may be believing now? Or how do you press the issue a little bit more so that they don't even have to be reminded? They know it, right? But it's such a fragile line. I think that's one of the areas that we have to keep working toward, to make sure that they stay where they are and keep believing it and eventually becoming it.
You definitely hit a nail on the tail on that one. I do have some, people close to me that are kind of having a hard time with that as well.
Yeah.
But following up, I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing, if you've had at one point in your life a similar experience that you have, or challenge that you have faced. Is there anything that you would be able to share on your experience to have other AAPI employees or teammates kind of learn from as well?
Yeah, this is a little embarrassing, but I'll go back to a few years into a few years
Nice.
after we immigrated, when we had language um, challenges and comprehension challenges of the language and things like that in school. And there's that stereotype: Asians are good at math, right? I could tell you the reason there's that stereotype is we just learned a little bit more when we were at our country, just not much more, just maybe one grade more. So when you immigrate here and you see, hey, I've done that before, boom. And I'm not discounting the hard work and the actual real smart people and all of that, but at least from my experience, I look like I was good at math because I've done it already. So just wanted to throw that out there. But uh, with that said, Puna, so it was really a struggle and embarrassing at times when I could not understand my friends. You know, those subtle jokes, subtle humors that kids share within themselves, right? As part of a friends clique. I remember back in the fourth or fifth or sixth grade, I would be in a group and they would suddenly, you know, this explosion of laughter, and I'm like, what just happened? What's going on? And they kind of look at you like, what's wrong with you? Are you not? They first might question your sense of humor, but when one of the kids on the other side kind of point that maybe he doesn't understand English or may say something hurtful like that, it was really hurtful. Because it wasn't my decision not to understand the language. It wasn't my decision to not understand what they were talking about. So so there were moments like that where I would go home, kind of shake my head and say, what are we doing here? Why did we even come here? Even after a couple of years into this. And then next day you meet one of your teachers actually come to you and do something really special for you, and you're reminded, well, that's why I'm here. That's why we're here. It's not always like yesterday, but it's a mix of yesterday and mix of what's just happened to me today. And then you get to meet, and we got to meet other, immigrated families as well who were in a similar boat. And when you start to talk out loud, the struggles, then it starts to make sense that it's not just you. It's not just unique to you. It's a situation and process that people go through to become more acclimated to the culture, to the new environment. And it's not for lack of trying, because there was that too. I felt I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I should be memorizing the dictionary 5-6 hours a day to get a grip on the English language. A 7-year-old thinking like this, right? How damaging is that when a 7 or 8-year-old is thinking, I got to memorize the dictionary so I could understand why the friends are laughing, as an example. So I remember a lot of that. And academics wise, same thing. It's when you have these standardized tests, and if I'm getting in too deep, Puna, please stop me, but when you get into these academic tests and you're not mastering the language or the grammar or the definitions, and they're testing on your ability to, how much you're mastering the concept, it was difficult. And it was actually very, those were some of the darker moments. And as a young kid, that was very, very difficult. But then you turn around and you look at the sports to kind of forget about that for at least one night. You watch a Seahawks game on a Sunday back in the early 80s, and they were really bad, but it didn't matter. I saw them play really hard. Although they lost, nobody played slow. Everybody played hard, and they just weren't very good, right? So you looked at, and that kind of took you away from your childhood issues at the time, right? So that's when I think your siblings, I have an older sister and a younger brother, and my younger brother is looking up to me as a real young kid. and you realize, well, I have to stand strong for him so that he doesn't see how bad things get. And then of course it's a little worse for my sister because she came when she was a little older, and it's a little bit harder for her to master the language than me, because she's already got some of that prior language down. So I would
So you've
say
been mentoring a lot of people.
Yeah, well, indirectly at the time, I probably didn't even know I was doing that. But thinking back, you just, you want to go into the corner and, weep or cry or do what you need to do to try to forget it. But it doesn't go away, as we know. So, yeah, just thinking like that. I guess those were some of the memories that I have that I should not forget. But wow, they were not easy.
I've been through that experience myself. I think many people can agree with that to a certain degree. So it's not something that we should be embarrassed about. I mean, I know at the time, at a young age, sure. But as we are older and we kind of look back, we realize, yep, that was just part of life. But bringing that awareness and how you were able to deal with it, right? You were able to, within yourself, take a moment, step back, and relish in something that could take your mind off of it, and then come back to it later, and you were able to identify that you could also try to help protect your siblings from going through that same experience. And so as I spoke that you've been mentoring a lot, that is the early stages of being able to mentor. And
So, Curt, do you mind sharing what brings you joy about your heritage and your culture?
Well, Korea in general has a very, very long history. I think more so than people realize when you go back to the Chosun era and the Goryeo era, and even longer than that we haven't even studied about. It's a long, proud tradition that we hold dear to our hearts. And it means a great deal to, of course, my parents and my kids' grandparents, but my kids are also embracing that more and more because it is so wonderful and it is so powerful and it is so long lasting in a way. So there's that component of it. I just don't want to single out Koreans in general, but Asian Americans in general, I think we're all proud of how much we've accomplished. And I did some study on the AAPI heritage, when it was formed and what it really means and how it was formed. And then, and I was even pleasantly surprised all the accomplishments of the different Asian communities across the country. They're just so wonderful to fall back on and so wonderful to identify and definitely be part of. So there's a lot of things that we all should be proud of, Misty, and we are. Now, the question is, how do we continue that? How do we make it more recognizable? And how do we embrace and pull in the next generation of Asian Americans and PI kids who are coming up really fast to embrace it and continue that tradition on?
That's great. I really like that answer. And to kind of tail off of that, I had the pleasure of listening to you speak last year. I was one of the lucky ones. I'm smiling at Belinda.
Sorry, everybody, I apologize.
Oh, it's okay. So I had the pleasure of hearing you last year speak, and then this year again.
Awesome.
And, I'm a huge ally, and I'm just curious, what do you think those of us that are in the community that are allies at AAPI, what could we do to maybe educate ourselves on the culture, traditions, or be more involved so that way we are more supportive of AAPI?
For those allies, and they could be anybody, right, Misty, don't be afraid to ask and don't be afraid to approach. There's this tendency that if you're not familiar or if you're not too sure, they kind of stay away. And that's actually pretty damaging because it feels like you don't want to be part of this or you don't want to be involving yourself on any of this, right? So knock on the door or come by and let's chat. It's okay to ask questions. And if the questions come out the wrong way, it's understandable. right? But at least they took the first step to try to understand, try to open up more. And once they learn and understand, then it becomes second nature to them. And that's how we grow this community. And AAPI is wonderful, but does it all have to be AAPI heritage folks? No, it should be inclusive of everybody. So everybody's aware, everybody enjoys the different and wonderful cultures that each nationality has to offer. Kind of like when we did this for the Martin Luther King Day tribute. I mean, what's the little snippet from his dream speech, right? He has a dream that every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain. Why does it have to be different, right? Just be open-minded, ask questions, and be willing to learn. And if you hear things that are unsure, ask. And then that's how you get started.
I 100% agree. I think as Proliance as a whole, we're all very invested into really just expanding and changing our culture here, and really holding diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront of everything that we're doing.
Absolutely.
I think it's important that everyone feels welcome, right? We want the best of the best here. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what your name is. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. You can't look at people and usually tell what they are, right? I'm German and Black. Most people think I'm part of the AAPI community. I had someone ask me earlier today. I have a great tan right now. So I think that it's wonderful when people know right ahead of time, but I think it's even more beautiful when they're willing to educate themselves and willing to learn. And I love the fact that you're open and honest. Do you have, any traditions or anything that you'll be really looking forward to this year in 2023 throughout the end of the year that you and your family might be taking part in, or maybe even some events you could share with us, or restaurants you could share with us that some of us might want to go out and take a look at for our own? And maybe we can send, a recap of, hey, this is the recording and these are some suggestions from Curt.
Yeah, I wish you would have asked me this back in 2019 when I was very active with all of this. And unfortunately, the pandemic kind of shut down a lot of that. And our lives are right now dependent on takeouts, not really engaging in these restaurants, Misty. But one of the events that we're looking forward to this year is, we haven't traveled in a couple years. We kind of stayed kind of grounded, and we're starting to consider now heading back out to the places we used to go. One of them is our in-laws place in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. So we will probably plan a trip out there, first time since 2019. So it's been a long time since we sat down with them. And our mother-in-law will be hitting a special milestone, which is her 80th birthday. And in Korean tradition, there's some key milestones for any elderly, right? 60 is absolutely critical, because that kind of signifies that you've gone through what they call a milestone in your life, because way back when apparently lifespan was less than 60. And if you reach 60, it's a huge milestone. And then 80 is also a significant milestone. It just means longevity, success, and happiness, right? There's correlation between happiness and longevity in life. So we hope to celebrate that in person in Edmonton, Alberta, in the summer. We will look forward to that. And there's special things that go on within the culture, like specific gift giving, special recognition, and special styles of celebrating someone's age when they hit number 80. I guess it's kind of similar to like in this country, when you hit the 25th mark in your marriage, you got the silver anniversary to celebrate, and 50th is gold. In Korean, if you hit 60, that's a huge milestone. 80 is another huge milestone. So we'll look forward to that. Some of the restaurants that I did enjoy and we look forward to enjoying again in 2023 is there's a place just locally here called Tamarind Tree. Oh, wonderful. Somebody introduced me to that restaurant, and it's a Vietnamese restaurant. I never really been to a Vietnamese restaurant until, I got introduced to it back in 2018. And it just brings that culture right to you, right to your palate, right in front of you. And you could kind of see it around you and feel it. And the food is phenomenal. So that's one, tamarind tree. And then if you're in for a good Korean meal, I don't necessarily recommend Korean restaurants. Just it's not to my standard, just to be honest with you. They think salt and MSG will fix everything and make it Korean, and that's really not true. There is a place called Korean Tofu House in the U District that I would recommend. And it's a place that I even brought my in-laws and my parents to. And I normally would not do that because their palates are very particular. And then maybe a third one is a place called Kona Kitchen. It's up in North Seattle. And Deb Hokulua at EDOC and I talk about this all the time. It's probably the closest thing that you have to a true, authentic Hawaiian restaurant. Loco Moco is phenomenal, and there's a number of other dishes that you could enjoy at Kona Kitchen. And it's just up a few miles from where our office is here on 8th and Madison. So I would say you got the Hawaiian, you got the Korean, and you got the Vietnamese kind of wrapped in all of that. So I would say I would recommend those three places.
I wrote all of those down. I'll make plans.
Those are phenomenal places, every single one, and I will 2 thumbs up for every single one of them. That's true.
Awesome.
Well, let's open it up again. I know I kind of jumped in and asked 2 questions. Feel free to come off of mute. We have quite a few people on here. Does anyone have a question for Curt before we continue?
Yeah, I do. Hi, Curt. I was
Stephanie.
just listening to your stories about language barriers and all the microaggressions you've have faced throughout the years. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more personal experience regarding prejudice or racisms that you encounter, and what steps were you able to take to overcome that problem?
Wow, that's very personal and very deep.
Very personal and difficult. I'm so sorry.
And Stephanie, I gotta admit, in the work environment, I don't see too much of that. Fortunately, I don't. I think Proliance is a great organization, and that's one of the reasons why. And even the previous organizations, yeah. But there was this one incident about 15 years ago. I was on a business trip to Dallas, Texas, and I went to their big mall. I forget the name of the mall, but it was a big mall. And I was with a colleague that I met at the conference, and we were kind of walking around, and we went into a small software store to kind of look around. Oh yeah, it was Galleria out of Dallas, Texas. And we went in, and I kind of was looking at something on the wall on a display. And then a non-Asian, Caucasian customer came in later, about 5 minutes later, and stood about 5 feet next to me and looking at something else. And the salesperson kind of sidestepped me and went straight to that non-minority customer and asked, may I help you? I'm thinking, oh, wait, wasn't I here first? Not that I needed help, but I thought that was really odd. And that bothered me. Should it have bothered me? I don't know. I still think to this day, maybe it looked like I didn't need any help, and they kind of went to that person directly without asking me for help. But that was like, come to think of it, it does exist in this country. All the stuff that I went through in high school, those were all kid stuff that kids kind of fool around with. So I didn't think too much of that back then. But yeah, when this happened in a professional life, or many, many years after you graduate and you're in a work world and it happens to you like that, it took a little bit of self-reflection, Stasny. I got to be honest with you, to absorb that, accept that. What am I going to do? Confront that person? No, I'm not going to do that. And maybe it was a regional thing as well. I don't know. I don't want to stereotype, or I don't want to generalize. But yeah, I would say that was the thing that I remember the most, like why would something like that happen? But outside of that, I can't really speak to too many other, racially related incidents. My daughter did share one thing. She said she was walking with her friend who was also an Asian American, and then somebody apparently came by and asked them if they were twins. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder why they would even say that. And then that got to me thinking, about 10 years ago, I was at a convenience store, and some gentleman came in, and he kind of looked at me and he said, "Wow, you look like Gary Locke." I kind of took that as a compliment because I'm a huge fan of Gary Locke, the former governor. But thinking about it more, I kind of questioned that the intention of that comment, right? What does that really mean? So things like that, Stasny, kind of lingers over me a little bit, but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but those are the things that I could share, at least right now.
No, thank you for sharing.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. I'll pass the mic to Julie.
Yeah, Julie, I see you have your hand raised. Do you want to
Hi,
come
Julie.
off of mute?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Curt, for sharing and being
bet.
vulnerable and honest.
You bet.
Really appreciate the honest view and perspective of your experiences. And what resonated with me was what you talked about, like your accent. Obviously, I have an accent because I grew up in Kenya. Over time, I have come to view it as a strength, given that people with accents, they speak multiple languages, and I speak 3 languages, and so that's
wow.
a strength. But, when you have these experiences where maybe other people view someone with an accent as if they're less capable or intelligent, over time, that can chip away at your confidence. And obviously, given your position within the company, you are an intelligent individual who is accomplished. And so my question is, how, what are some of the principles you live by to keep you grounded and to keep you confident as you navigate both your personal and professional life?
Well, everybody needs a grounding. Julie, by the way, thank you so much for your question and your perspective as well. Really appreciate you and what you do here. But we always look for something that we could latch onto to truly ground ourselves, right? Me and my family, we're a faith-based family. We're Christians, and we attend the East Ridge Community Church locally. So we use that as a foundation for a lot of that grounding. But also, the family itself is a grounding that we use to reflect, not only for yourself, but for each other as well. The accent comment, that was really interesting, because one of my kids mentioned something in that effect. They were hearing someone with a thick accent, Asian accent, she said, but they spoke the language better than her. I'm thinking so I asked her, did you think they could not speak as well as you if they had an accent? And she said, no, just, it was a new experience for her, right? Because you associate accents with maybe someone not having a firm grasp on the language. Like way back when, Julie, I know I had accents and I worked hard. I didn't memorize the dictionary. No, I did not do that. But I worked on the language. I worked on pronunciations, and thinking about it, maybe that was just selfish and an immature thing to focus on. But yeah, there were things like that, which was kind of interesting for me to think about. But yeah, I don't know, Julie, if I answered your question, but yeah, your comments brought some things up again as I was thinking through them.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you as well.
Thank you. Does anyone else has any further questions that they'd like to ask Curt or share?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment. I think you have a really great outlook and a really strong foundation.
Thank you.
And I think a lot of us can learn from that, to not let things get to us, right? And bring us down. And so I'm just wondering if, other than what you've already shared, you mentioned the religion and the strong family values, what else might you incorporate into keeping that positive outlook and realizing that I have a choice, right? I can let somebody else's actions or comments bring me down, or I can, take it for what it is and say, that's your problem. I know who I am, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm going to keep pushing forward. So is there anything else that you could maybe leave, anyone who might be going through that or experiencing that?
Belinda, that's a great question. And it's not easy because I go through that on a regular basis. What I said, I mean, even today for the last, hour or so, I'm going to reflect back. Did I say the right things? Did I say things properly? Did I sound like an idiot at times? I don't know. I'm going to self-assess, right? But one of the things that my team, Paul, Will, Kim, and Lisa, we always talk about is not to take what's in front of us personally, not to take what happens here at work personally, because it's not directed at you. It's directed at the situation. And unfortunately, you are part of that situation. So don't take it as an attack on you. And that right there takes away a lot of it. So that's one suggestion. And then two, it's okay to feel bad, and it's okay to go home hurt, because that's going to help you recover, right? If you go home thinking you're all recovered, then you're not going to make an effort to recover. But if you feel something's nagging at you, you're going to go home and do self-reflections, talk to someone that you really care for and love, and talk it out. And that's really where the true recovery happens. So it's okay to take that home, and it's okay to talk it out, and then come back the next day refreshed and put all that behind you. So those are a couple of things that I would recommend.
Those are great. Thank you, Curt.
You're welcome.
Yes, those are great recommendations. Thank you so much, Curt. And I just want to thank everybody here today for joining.